Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode, we're talking about the 2018 NFL Draft Class, and specifically Alabama's Calvin Ridley. This has been a video that I have been looking to do, particularly about production analytics at the football position. There's a lot more to projecting in the NFL draft when it comes to analytics than just production analytics. There is athleticism data, physical characteristic data, that's like height, weight, arm length, hand size, stuff like that. And then of course you have production analytics, the combine, 40-yard dash, vertical broad jump, short shuttle three cone. All those things are part of the process. Every piece matters when it comes to the NFL draft, just as production analytics matters when it comes to the overall picture of a prospect. But what I wanted to focus on in this video today was just a short little video telling you what Calvin Ridley's production analytics says about him potentially as a future prospect in the NFL, give you a little bit of background about production analytics and the methodology that I use, and then of course just giving my ultimate thoughts and opinions about Calvin Ridley, at least at this stage so far. So first off, what are production analytics at the wide receiver position? It's simply this: it's market share data, passing yardage market share data specifically. And the way you get the passing yardage market share production data, at least the methodology that I use, is you take a individual offensive statistic, in this case passing yards of a wide receiver, and you divide it by the team total passing yardage. So for example, if a wide receiver had 1,000 yards on a team that had 4,000 yards passing, then that wide receiver had 25% passing yardage market share production, which makes sense. Now, but what you do with that number is you take that 25% market share data and you compare it to every single wide receiver performance, and based on the same methodology since the 1969 NFL draft class, and then boom, you have a way of comparing where all the multiple All-Pro wide receivers were, where the multiple Pro Bowl wide receivers were, where the long-term starter wide receivers were, and then of course where most of the busts or near-do-well type wide receivers ended up as well. So it just gives you sort of a historical perspective in terms of this is where multiple Pro Bowl wide receivers typically produce when it comes to market share data, and that's what we're going to look at today. So we're going to look at two main things here. We're going to look at thresholds, which is essentially the bottom end threshold. So like there has never been a multiple All-Pro or multiple Pro Bowl wide receiver to score less than this. And then we're also going to look at averages, which is essentially just the average score of a All-Pro wide receiver, the average score of a Pro Bowl wide receiver, the average score of a long-term starter, etc. And when you look at Calvin Ridley's data, he had a 78.89 passing yardage market share production score. Since the 1969 NFL draft class, there have not been any 5-time All-Pro or 3-time All-Pro wide receivers with less than a 80 to 85 to 80 in terms of those two particular areas since the 1969 NFL draft class. So Calvin Ridley realistically is about 1.01 points away from that 3-time All-Pro threshold area, which is not that bad. Again, there is a margin of error to this. There is the fluctuation of errors and stuff like that. So this doesn't mean that Calvin Ridley can't become an All-Pro wide receiver. It's just that there's never been a 3-time All-Pro or 5-time All-Pro wide receiver without hitting at least that minimum threshold there. And also these numbers are relatively either rounded up or rounded down, just to give you like a solid number in terms of the chart here. However, Calvin Ridley did hit the 3-time Pro Bowl level when it comes to passing yardage market share production. So at the very least, Calvin Ridley could become a multiple Pro Bowl wide receiver. So we're talking about guys like Mike Wallace, Dwayne Bowe, guys like that. At least most recent examples would be players like that in terms of 3-time Pro Bowl level when it comes to him. So not necessarily a incredibly generational wide receiver talent based on his passing yards market share production data, but definitely a guy that's rarer than most. I mean, he had above average passing yards market share production. So that tells you something about a guy like that. And of course, he also has a pretty good chance of being a long-term starter, which the long-term starter threshold is 58 out of 100. Then when you get to the averages at the position, same difference. All-Pro average All-Pro score is 92.14, average Pro Bowl score is 88.38, and average starter score is 81.45. So he's a little bit less than the average in terms of All-Pro and Pro Bowl level, but he is fairly close to the average when it comes to starter level. So, I mean, take that as you will. So when it comes to Calvin Ridley, big things to point out again is he does have good production. He does have above average production, but he doesn't quite have generational, like, this isn't Tim Brown, this isn't Jerry Rice, this isn't Marvin Harrison, this isn't, this isn't like a incredibly generational talent or Randy Moss, etc. This is just a guy that has some Pro Bowl potential, definitely a long-term starter potential, and is a very high-quality wide receiver. It's just that you have to keep in mind, in perspective, in any draft class, you need to know what the chances are of this player becoming a really, really special wide receiver, more so than just, oh, I really like him on film and he looks really great, if you will. But in this case, Calvin Ridley looks fairly decent as a wide receiver prospect. Film-wise, I mean, just my personal opinion on him, I do like Calvin Ridley a lot. I think this guy has very good body control, very good speed for a guy like him. Knows how to use speed to get open. And I think in general, he's just a very, very good wide receiver. I don't quite see a generational talent per se, which the data kind of backs that up. I mean, for example, I don't really see Calvin Ridley as a Julio Jones, as an Amari Cooper. If you're just talking about Alabama wide receivers in general, he's kind of below those guys, below Cooper, below Julio Jones. But can he become a long-term starter in the NFL? Absolutely. And of course, my name is James Coburn. You can find my other work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know. Hit that notification button so that you're always reminded when another video of mine drops. And I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.